We're Jimmy and Johnny Lewis, and we are the two old farts traveling. Sometimes we're traveling, sometimes we're just old farts. Everybody says to get out of Dodge.
One lone British soldier, I'm told, ran straight into a militiaman at the well at Fisk Farm.
You are a dead man!
And so are you!
this is where the man stood. Yeah. That's all the numbers.
If you're interested, we have a list of names of the men who were on the roster on that day. If you want to check it out, see if you have an ancestor on it.
Oh. Okay, I don't think I have any here, but I did down there.
Is Hartwell Tavern, which is really the perfect spot to talk about the colonial militia, the Minutemen, and their role here in April of 1775. Now, just to kind of start us off here, the militia is a right of the people that live in this area, the British subjects here. It is a right going back to the 1400s, 1500s. We won't go that far back in British history, but basically the militia is seen as something to protect the community, to protect the communities around you, and also really a sense of duty for the people that live here in this area and in the colony. So, the people that lived in this house right here, the Hartwell family, they would have about 6 members of their family in the colonial militia. 5 of the sons would all be in the militia, and some would be Minutemen as well. 3 would see action here along the Battle Road and at North Bridge. The other 2 would see, and all 5 would really see fighting during the American Revolution as well. And the father, Ephraim, he was also in the militia, but he's older at this time. To be in the militia, typically you have to be between the ages of 16 and 60. You are expected to serve. Ephraim is a little bit older at this time, so he is more of an administrative role in the militia. So really, everybody has a purpose here in the militia if you're a male between the ages of 16 to 60 and even beyond 60 in some cases. Now, the militia, a lot of times they get this bad rap as this ragtag farmers. A bunch of farmers with pitchforks is a common term we've heard. Well, that is not true. They trained, they were expected to not only understand their training, but to take it seriously. And they were also expected to really be ready to defend the community and ready for war if needed as well. So typically the militia, they were paid in some instances. If you traveled some distance, if you were gone for the night, you would be paid. The Minutemen, which are developed a little bit later, are not paid, but we'll get into those differences a little bit later. But the militia, they would be paid, and they would drill about 4 times a year. Does that sound like a lot? No, not really, right? They would about 4 times a year. They're mostly doing formations, drilling, understanding the orders of when to load, when to fire, when to reload. If the officer says this or this command or gives this command, you are expected to understand it and to follow it. And you were also expected to come to every drill. It didn't matter if you had crops in the field, if you had some work to do, you were expected to come out and serve with your community. And we got to remember too, the militia had a lot of familial connections, all right? A lot of families serving together. These are small, Concord's not even a town or a city at this time. It's known as a village, Concord Village. So there's a lot of family connections of cousins, second cousins, brothers, fathers-in-law. They're all serving together as well. And you probably know a lot of people in the neighboring towns like Lincoln and Lexington and Concord and such, because you're working with these people. You probably have, again, some family connections to those towns. So if you didn't show up for drill and all your family was there, not you, do you think they're going to be very happy with you? Does it sound like you fulfilled your sense of duty? No, absolutely not. So people took this very seriously, not only as their legal right, but also as a duty to their neighbors and their family. Now, the Minutemen would really be formed going into the late 1760s into the 1770s. There's more British are in the area at this time. We have about 5,000 British troops occupying Boston and Boston Harbor. So people are kind of worried, okay? They're worried about an invading army, some see, even though they're very much British subjects, and that is the British Army. With all the issues going on and some of the rabble-rousing going on by people like Sam Adams and others and the Reverend William Emerson, there's some heightened security going on here. So the militia would go from training 4 times a year to about once or twice a month. The Minutemen, they're training as much as twice a week, okay? And what does that tell us? They're preparing for something. They want to be prepared for something. Now, as a Minuteman or Militiaman, you were expected, like I said, not only to protect your community, but the communities around you as well. And to do that, you need the right equipment, right? You can't show up to war, to a battle, and say, okay, who's got my gun, right? And you have your gun. It was expected you to have a working weapon and certain other things. So, I know everybody's been staring at this since I brought it out. This would have been the musket that would have been very common in the 1700s, used by the militia here and also some of the British soldiers and others as well. It's a flintlock musket, and really you were expected to have a good, clean, working musket for the most part. Nice sharp flint, nice sharp steel, so when you shoot it, you get that nice spark as well, which will ignite your gunpowder. Now, some of the colonists, they didn't have these weapons of war, such as this. They had smaller pieces, some for hunting, fowling pieces. These people were not common soldiers. They were more citizen soldiers, ready to protect their community, while the British, the redcoats marching through, they were the regular army. They had the weapons of war. They had the brown bess, which is like the M16 of the 1700s is the easiest way to think about it, right? Top technology made for war. And the British, well, I'll get into their training in a second. Let me go over what the militiamen needed more. So they needed a good working weapon, nice sharp flint. They also needed some bullets and cartridges, okay? These would be filled with gunpowder and a bullet as well. Some would carry just powder horns and bags of bullets. When we're doing the demonstration today, there are no bullets in these. We will not be shooting lead downfield. Hanscom's right over there. I don't think they'd like that too much. Okay? So you need a certain amount of gunpowder, certain amount of cartridges made up, or bullets as well. You also needed a nice sidearm. So you could either have this bayonet right here. Makes the weapon look much better, I believe. Or you could have a nice sword as well. If you could afford it, there's a general idea that only officers had swords. Not quite, but typically officers were a little more well off and could afford swords for the most part. Now, you also needed a canteen full of water, of course. You needed also a backpack with a nice blanket. I'll stop today. The blanket and about a day or two provisions, because again, you might be going off to fight Native Americans, to fight the French, to fight the Spanish. These were all common fears in the 16 and 1700s that the militia was expected to serve and to really protect the community against. So if you didn't have all these things, you were not ready for drill. You were not ready to be called out to war, and you could be fined as well or taxed if you're not ready. Because again, it's a sense of duty here. This is moral obligation to protect and serve your community. Now the Minutemen, they would have basically the same things, only they would promise to always have their weapons ready within a minute's notice. Why? Because they were Minutemen, exactly. They were supposed to be ready in a minute's notice. Some of the men here that lived here, again, the Hartwell, Samuel, Jonathan, they are Minutemen. They're going out into the fields. They're not leaving their weapons and all their stuff at home. They're bringing it out to the fields with them. They're ready, because if there's a rider that goes by and says, the redcoats are coming, and you're, hundreds of yards away in your field, and they're right there, are you ready? No, it's going to take you longer than a minute, right? So typically, a lot of the Minutemen would have these things with them ready to go. Now on the other side here, the troops that would march right on this road here that way to Concord, and then all the way back, have their running retreat back to Boston, this would be the British Army. This is one of the most respected and the best army in the world in these 1700s. Again, they have top technology. They actually carry more shot and gunpowder than the militia, and their training was a little different, you could say. So the colonial militia, they're training 4 times a year. It's up to about once a month, right? Well, even in modern times, the United States Army, how long is basic training for the Army? Does anybody know?
6 weeks.
6 weeks, so just over 2 months, right? Marines, just over 3 months. The British regular in the 1770s, their basic training was 18 months. 18 months. That's a lot of drilling. That's a lot of formations. That's a lot of being given orders, not thinking about them, just doing them as well, right? And also, it's about learning how to use this weapon, which is what the militia did as well. So typically, a good soldier could reload this weapon in about 20 to 25 seconds and be ready to shoot again. However, this weapon isn't very accurate. It's good up to 30 yards, maybe 50 yards. And typically when you're shooting it, you're not aiming right between the eyes, right? You're just kind of hoping you're shooting at this other mass of people in a column, in a regiment, and you're hoping you hit something. So do you think that just one of these kind of scattered about is a good way to use it? No, and that's why we had these big regiments, which today look absolutely ridiculous, people standing in big groups and shooting back and forth at one another at 50 yards. But this is how you made this weapon effective. You masked your fire for the most part. We're going to do an example in just a minute of how to effectively mask your fire, much like the British military did. But being in a larger group with your regiment and everybody being given the order to fire at once is going to be much more effective than just one or two people hiding in guerrilla warfare, as we call it today. It's not going to be as effective. You're not going to have as much influence and damage on the enemy as you would need to in the 1700s. So, how do we feel about doing a British formation real quick? Yeah, all right, I like it. So, if everybody could line up and give me 3 lines, one starting here, one starting here, and one starting here. Typically, I will ask these shorter people to be in the front here. Yeah, absolutely. Line up right behind this young lady right here.
I'm a photographer.
You want to go in the front? You want to go in the front row? Yeah, straight. Nice and straight. I got 4. I got 4 rows.
Can I just...
So yeah, just filter in and everybody face to the house. Yes, that's okay, so let's just basically all shoot at once and see how that works out, okay? So I'm going to give 3 orders, okay? You're not to do anything unless I give the order. So we have make ready, take aim, fire, bang. No pew pew pew, no, none of that. One shot, bang, and that's it. Then you will start counting to 20, because that's about how long it takes you to reload, okay? So, for the people in the front, if you can, you're going to kneel down for me right now. If you can't, don't worry about it. So you guys now can obviously shoot over their heads, right? The people in the back, make ready for me. Last row, make ready. Take aim. Where do you think you're going to aim? Right over their shoulder. You can also get a little closer if you needed to in the back, but think about that. This isn't very quiet. You're going to hear it in a minute. Imagine this going off right next to your ear. Now imagine about 700 of them going off kind of near your ear. Not great, right? Okay, so everybody with me. Ready? Make ready. Take aim. Fire. 1, 2, count out loud. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's a long 20 seconds, huh? What do you think the enemy's doing? They're like, oh, we gotta wait for them to reload and we just shot, right? You're shooting, or it's bayonet time. They're charging you for the most part. So does that make sense to all fire at once? No. So what we're doing makes sense, massing our fire into one general location with inaccurate weapons, right? But if we all shoot at once, we're in trouble, right? So the British Army, they would have staggered fire for the most part, all right? So we're going to divide up into 3 sections for the most part. So from the white shirt over, from the red shirt right here over, and you guys over here. So we have 3 regiments, we'll call you, okay? So I'm going to give each regiment a different command, and we're going to see how this works now, okay? So we have 1, 2, 3. Regiment 1, make ready. Take aim. Fire! Start counting. Regiment 2, make ready. Take aim. Fire! Start counting. 1, 2, 3, make ready. Take aim. Fire! Make ready. Take aim. Fire! You don't have to count. Make ready. Take aim. Fire! You ready? Take aim. Fire. Boom. We've just vanquished the enemy with relentless fire. That's what just happened. Did we ever really stop firing? No, absolutely. So we're still massing our fire, but now we're keeping up a consistent fire, which is not going to allow the enemy to charge. They're not going to be able to reload as quickly. They might even get disorganized as more and more are being killed, especially if officers are being killed. So just massing your fire wasn't enough. It was also important to have tactics so you have a constant rate of fire. That's going to give you the success in the field. So now we understand why 18 months of training for the British Army was necessary. When you have 18 times as many people as this on the field, right, for a small battle. Knowing when to fire, knowing your regiment, and knowing your orders are very, very important, all right? So now, we're gonna go into the musket demonstration. I'm gonna hand you off to Ranger Jen while I go get ready.
A battle situation. He'll get one command, and the rest will be up to him. Everybody take care. Rest your firelock. Shoulder firelock. Prepare to prime and load. Open pan. Handle, cartridge. Prime. Shut pan. Cast about. Charge with cartridge. Draw rammers. Ram down cartridge. Return rammers. Shoulder firelocks. Make ready. Present. Fire. Ooh. All right, we have a misfire. So Chris is counting to 10 before putting the musket down. So you can put your hands down. So misfire is fairly common. Sometimes it means that the powder is damp. Sometimes the steel is dirty. This is something that happens. It can happen anytime.
Is it loose?
You
Still sharp?
Yep.
Okay. Wipe it down. With your rag.
So this is why maintenance on any of your weapons is going to be very important. This honestly can happen anytime to anyone.
Det kommer inte hända för det kommer inte bli. Det kommer bara låta ingenting annat. Är det inte inget? Det som hände var ibland så funkar bara inte vapen. Så stod man där
Imagine this happening in the middle of a battle.
Och sen så skulle man skjuta till nu kan man skjuta. Annars funkar det inte. Så fick man göra något mer.
All right, make ready. Present. Fire.
It's one of those days.
It happens. Honestly, it happens. So, this time, empty the primer, and I would just make sure that the flint is sharp. Okay. All right. So, third time's the charm. After the third time, we are kaput. Really think about this. This is why we train, because in the event of an emergency, in the event of this happening during a battle, you need to be able to figure out what the problem is, how to fix it, and how to safely reload and be ready to fire again without running into another British soldier. So you might have people using the back of the Hartwell house or the barn just to kind of sit there, take a minute to breathe, and figure out what the problem was. Because if you don't realize that you have had a misfire and you keep loading and you keep loading, what do you think is going to happen? You've got all sorts of explosives down the bottom of the barrel. We don't want that. So this is what we practice for. All right. All right. Third time's the charm. Cross your fingers. Make ready. Present. Fire.
Very satisfying.
All right, up to you. That command would translate to prime and load. Remember, a well-trained member of the militia or Minutemen, be ready to fire again within 15 to 20 seconds.
Ja, men håller för. Men du ska vänta lite. Vänta, sätta upp facken. Och sen riktarna framåt. Inte? Jo, just nu så håller han fortfarande på. Nu så.
Make ready?
Ja, du kan hålla på den.
Present. Fire!
Right? But, I mean, it is what it is for the 1700s. This was really the top technology for soldiers at this time, was the flintlock musket. I'm sure from older movies and other films we've seen, we remember the Spanish musket, which had literally a little rope that you could light on fire and pull out. The rope would just touch the gunpowder. Basically same idea, only now you don't have a burning thing in front of your face that could accidentally drop on the pan and boom, there we go, when you don't mean to. But again, it's not perfect technology, but this is what the soldiers, the militia, the Minutemen were using at this time. This gun weighs about a gallon of milk. So not too heavy, but carrying all this all day, all with me, I got about 50 pounds of gear on right now. My shoes are made out of wood and metal. So you can think, some of the soldiers marching to Concord and then marching, or really running retreat back to Boston. This is what they were wearing. These are the things they were carrying. These are the tools they had to survive. Very different than today's military. So with that, thank you very much for coming to the talk and the demonstration here. I'd be happy to stay, answer any questions. If you'd like a closer look at the musket, that's completely fine. It will just always stay in my hands, of course, and we will do it in the shade. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate you all.
Thanks, Chris. No, there's his grandfather. He was the one that was born in died in 1864.